Hey everybody. For those who have been using computers for many years, you may remember this right here. AOL. This here is an unopened AOL CD from 2003. Never been opened, still shrink wrapped, everything. Used to get these in the mail all the time. Used to be able to get them at almost any store. They'd have shelves just full of them. These CDs were everywhere. See, back in the early 90s, getting online was really difficult, and America Online come out with software that you can install on your computer to enable it to get on the internet. And the software was a whole suite of everything. You had your email, your instant messaging, your chat rooms, all that kind of stuff, all in one software package. So you could pretty much, even though I don't really think much of AOL, you can really, considering what the internet is today, AOL was really the company that really got consumers, at least home users, on the internet using their software and everything. And of course, that was all over dial-up. See, back in the mid-90s, my mom purchased a Packard Bell computer with Windows 95. I believe it was 96 she bought that thing. It had Windows 95 on it. And I believe in 97 or 98, one of those 2 years, my mom decided to get AOL. So that way we could get on the internet. And that was really the big thing back then. I mean, of course, like stuff like instant messaging and email, even though we take that stuff for granted nowadays, that's pretty much, I mean, you don't think much about nowadays, but back then, those kinds of things were really big. And being as a kid, I was like, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, getting online was really cool. And a lot of my family used America Online to get onto the internet. It's like our AOL account still has a bunch of email addresses for my grandpa, me, my mom, my dad, and my grandmother on my dad's side of the family still has an AOL account, well, at least an AOL address. And for many years, AOL was what we used to get on the internet. Back in 2000, my grandpa and my mom opened up a antique shop. And it's real funny. Back then, of course, we had a computer and everything. And we had 3 separate phone lines from Bell South. One was for fax, one was for telephone line, and the other was for a standalone dial-up line, so that way the computer could always be online and not interfere with the telephone. AOL was used in that store to get online, and that store was open from 2000 through 2003, and we closed the store down in 2003, and we still used AOL at home for a few more years. My mom then got into selling stuff on eBay, and of course she bought a newer e-machine system. It was back in late 2002 she bought that computer, and she opened it and did upgrades on it herself, upgraded the memory and replaced modems many different times because she heavily relied on those modems to get online through dial-up internet access, and of course lightning hit the modem several times, so we had to replace modems. She actually had 2 modems in her computer at one time, so that way if one got fried, all she had to do was hook in another, use the other modem. It was pretty funny back then. And I think in 2003 or 2004, Bell South finally offered DSL service for a cheap enough price, so we finally got off a dial-up and used DSL, but we still used AOL primarily to browse the web. And it wasn't until 2005 that I finally, I was officially tired of AOL. So like in 2005, my mom and me moved to where I'm at now with my dad, and we got soon later we actually got Roadrunner internet access. So soon later I got tired of AOL and I switched over to using a browser. And since I still use an AOL email address, I tried out this. See, AOL used to have, they tried every way possible to try to keep you with their stuff. If you didn't use the full featured AOL software, they actually offered for a limited amount of time, they had piece of software called AOL Explorer. It was a web browser, but it was like an AOL browser. It was called AOL Explorer, and I think it ran on top of Internet Explorer. And officially in 2006, I quit using AOL completely. I started using Mozilla Firefox and switched to a Gmail email address. So anyways, that was a little rundown of my history with AOL. And of course, as I mentioned, AOL, they played a big part in making the internet what it is today. But nowadays, since people are using high-speed internet, AOL isn't really much of a company anymore. I mean, they still offer email and that kind of stuff, and they do it over, of course, AOL.com, and they make their money off of ad revenue. Things are much different today than they were many years ago, but surprisingly, there are still many people who are still using AOL, and that's because in many rural areas you can't get DSL and you can't get any sort of high-speed connection, so you're stuck with dial-up. As I mentioned, I quit using AOL completely in 2006. I switched to Mozilla Firefox and used Gmail, and most of my family has since made that switch. But there is actually still a couple people in my family that are still using AOL. And the thing is, I don't really like AOL at all because it tends to be a resource hog on your computer. But there are people who still like to use AOL because they're familiar with it. For example, my dad, he is not very familiar with computers, and he still uses AOL. I mean, if he wants to look up something simple, he'll actually pull up a web browser, because my mom uses Google Chrome. He'll still pull up a web browser and search for like ESPN or whatever. But if he's checking his email, he still goes into the AOL software. And while I prefer that he switch to Gmail, I still have to respect what he wishes to do and use AOL. And my grandmother, she just finally got off a dial-up because she finally got DSL in rural South Carolina. And she's probably still using AOL because that's what she's familiar with. And that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. See, AOL has officially made all their services free if you're actually using a different internet access. But there are many people out there that are still paying for AOL service. Most of them are still using dial-up service, but there are still some people out there that are paying AOL just to have email. Okay, here's the Mid-Tower Deluxe Black Max, which is my parents' computer, and I was just curious to see something. Since my father still uses AOL, he still has the software installed, and I'm going to pull up to show you what it looks like. The good thing is the newer AOL software is nowhere near the resource hog that it used to be. So let's see if I can still log into my old BotGeek2 account. I haven't used this account in many years. It's been many years since I even actually used this. I actually still had a an email address with AOL, but it's never used it. And here is just the reason why I don't like AOL. I mentioned that AOL is not nearly as bad of a resource hog that it used to be, but there's all this stuff that it tries to offer you. Like, you got this big old ad here for cleaning junk off your PC, and over here you got this ad for AOL search enhanced by Google, all that kind of stuff. But overall, the AOL software has not really changed at all over all these different years. And I just wanted to let you all know that you don't have to pay to use this software to get to your email if you're using something like DSL or cable broadband. All you gotta do is download the software and just use it like this. But you actually do have to get a hold of AOL and tell them that you want to switch over to a free account. So anyways, like I mentioned, I don't really care much for AOL. The only reason it's still installed on this computer is because my dad uses it, and that's fine. But I personally recommend that you switch to something like Firefox or Google Chrome, and you can easily access your email, your AOL email through AOL.com. But if you still choose to use the software, because let's say you're familiar with it, if you still choose to use the software, just know that you do not have to pay to use this. So anyways, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask, and thanks for watching.